everything everyone thinks they know about Shedeur Sanders going to Cleveland is wrong. And the one secret buried deep in the Browns' 2026 plan that absolutely no one has noticed is about to blow this entire situation wide open, while the media has been focused on Deion's advisory role, the financial packages, and the revenge plans against Kevin Stefanski. They've completely missed the most important clause hidden in the contract documents that were filed with the league office. That clause, according to sources who've actually read the full filing, gives Shedeur Sanders a completely unprecedented opt-out provision that allows him to terminate his rookie contract and become a free agent after just one season if specific organizational conditions aren't met. This isn't a standard player option or a performance clause. This is a nuclear escape hatch that would allow Shedeur to walk away from Cleveland after 2026 if the Browns don't live up to their promises. And it's structured in a way that's never been done before in NFL history. The conditions that trigger the opt-out are so specific and so favorable to Shedeur that according to legal experts who've analyzed the language, the Browns essentially gave Shedeur a one-year trial period where if anything goes wrong, organizationally, on the field, or in terms of the commitments they made to Deion, Shedeur can bail and Cleveland loses everything. This means Shedeur might not be in Cleveland long-term at all. And the Browns just agreed to the most risky, most one-sided rookie contract in league history without anyone realizing it. The contract clause that nobody noticed is buried in page 47 of the 63-page contract filing that the Cleveland Browns submitted to the NFL league office on Wednesday, February 26, 2026, as part of the official documentation of their agreement with Shedeur Sanders. According to sources who've reviewed the full contract, the document is structured like most rookie deals with standard language about salary, guarantees, bonuses, and performance incentives taking up the first 40 pages. But then, according to sources, there's a section titled Special Provisions and Organizational Performance Conditions. That begins on page 41 and continues through page 52. And it's in this section where the opt-out clause is hidden among other language about media appearances, community obligations, and endorsement approvals. The opt-out clause itself, according to sources who've read it, is written in dense legal language that makes it easy to miss if you're not reading carefully or if you're not specifically looking for unusual provisions. But according to attorneys who specialize in sports contracts and who've now analyzed the language after sources brought it to their attention, the clause is absolutely revolutionary and potentially catastrophic for the Browns if it gets triggered. The provision, according to these sources, states that Shedeur Sanders shall have the unilateral right to terminate this contract and become an unrestricted free agent, eligible to sign with any NFL team if any of the following conditions occur during or at the conclusion of the 2026 season. The specific conditions that would trigger the opt-out, according to sources, are laid out in 7 numbered subsections, and each one is specific enough to be enforceable but broad enough to give Shedeur significant latitude in determining whether the Browns have violated the spirit of their agreement. The first condition, according to sources, states that if Jimmy Haslam or any member of the Browns ownership group interferes with football operations in any manner that materially contradicts the commitments made in the non-interference agreement dated February 24, 2026, as determined by an independent arbiter selected jointly by both parties, then Shedeur shall have the right to terminate within 60 days of such determination. According to legal experts, this condition essentially makes the non-interference agreement binding not just morally but contractually, and it gives Shedeur a way to escape if Haslam breaks his promise about staying out of football decisions. The second condition, according to sources, involves the coaching staff and offensive infrastructure. According to the language, if Todd Monken is removed as head coach for any reason other than voluntary resignation or gross misconduct, or if the offensive coordinator or quarterback's coach positions are filled by individuals who have not been approved in advance by Shedeur Sanders. Then the opt-out can be triggered, according to sources. This essentially gives Shedeur veto power over offensive coaching changes and guarantees that the coaching staff he was promised when he signed will remain intact, at least for his first season. If the Browns try to make changes Shedeur doesn't like, according to sources, he can walk away. The third condition, according to sources, is tied to Deion Sanders' advisory Holly. According to the contract language, if the Browns terminate or materially reduce Deion's advisory position, responsibilities, or compensation for any reason other than Deion's voluntary resignation or documented breach of his advisory contract, Shedeur can opt out. According to sources familiar with the Sanders family's negotiating strategy, this clause was critical to ensuring that the Browns can't get Shedeur under contract and then immediately push Deion out, which was apparently a concern based on the family's past experiences with organizations making promises they don't keep. The fourth condition, according to sources, involves team performance and organizational chaos. According to the language, if the Cleveland Browns fail to achieve a winning record in the 2026 season, defined as more losses than wins, or if the team experiences what the contract defines as significant organizational dysfunction, including but not limited to player revolts, mass coaching staff turnover, public conflicts between ownership and management, or criminal investigations involving team personnel, then Shedeur can trigger the opt-out. According to legal experts who've analyzed this language, this is an extraordinarily broad provision that essentially allows Shedeur to leave if the season goes badly or if the Browns return to the kind of chaos that's defined the franchise in recent years. The fifth condition, according to sources, is tied to Shedeur's playing time and role. According to the language, if Shedeur is benched or removed from the starting quarterback position for any reason other than injury or his own documented violation of team rules, and if that benching lasts for more than a consecutive games, the opt-out can be triggered. According to sources, this clause guarantees that Shedeur will be the starter barring extraordinary circumstances, and it prevents the Browns from jerking him around with quarterback controversies or competition, the way they've done with previous young quarterbacks. The sixth condition, according to sources, involves the financial commitments regarding endorsements and business opportunities. According to the contract, if the Browns fail to facilitate at least $15 million in endorsement deals and business partnerships during Shedeur's first year through the Cleveland Market Maximization Package as outlined in Exhibit G, then the opt-out can be triggered. According to sources, this makes the financial promises the Browns made to Shedeur about helping him maximize his off-field earning potential actually enforceable rather than just aspirational. And the seventh condition, according to sources, is the most unusual and potentially the most significant. According to the language, if Shedeur determines in good faith that the Cleveland Browns organization has failed to maintain the culture, professionalism, and competitive standards that were represented to him during contract negotiations, he may request an independent evaluation by a jointly selected sports management consultant who will assess the organization's adherence to the commitments made. If that consultant's report supports Shedeur's concerns, the opt-out can be triggered. According to legal experts, this is essentially a subjective escape clause that gives Shedeur enormous power to argue that Cleveland isn't what they promised. And if an independent evaluator agrees, he can leave. What makes all of these conditions together so powerful, according to sources who've studied the contract, is that they're not structured as an or proposition where only one needs to be triggered. They're structured as independent grounds for termination, meaning Shedeur has 7 different potential escape routes, and he only needs one of them to succeed to get out of Cleveland after one season. And according to sources, several of these conditions are so broad and subjective that they're almost certain to be triggerable if Shedeur wants to leave, particularly the organizational dysfunction clause and the subjective culture assessment clause, the process for actually exercising the opt-out, according to sources who've reviewed the contract, is straightforward and designed to move quickly. If Shedeur believes one or more of the conditions have been triggered, according to the language, he notifies the Browns in writing of his intent to exercise the opt-out. The Browns then have 15 days to cure the alleged breach if it's curable, or to dispute the claim by requesting arbitration with the jointly selected independent arbiter. If arbitration occurs, according to the contract, it must be completed within 45 days, and the arbiter's decision is final and binding. If the arbiter rules in Shedeur's favor, or if the Browns decline to dispute the opt-out, Shedeur immediately becomes an unrestricted free agent with no compensation owed to Cleveland. No trade restrictions, and no other strings attached. The implications of this opt-out clause for the Cleveland Browns are absolutely devastating if it gets triggered. According to legal and business experts who've analyzed the situation, if Shedeur plays one season in Cleveland and then opts out, according to sources, the Browns would lose the 3rd overall pick they used on him, the additional draft picks they gave up to trade up to 3rd overall, the massive financial commitments they made to Deion Sanders in his advisory role, the business partnerships and endorsement facilitations they committed to, and they'd be left with no quarterback and no recourse. According to sources, they can't even get draft pick compensation the way teams typically do when players leave in free agency, because the contract specifies that Shedeur's departure through the opt-out doesn't count as standard free agency for compensation purposes. The question that's now consuming NFL circles since this clause came to light through sources leaking it too. Reporters is why the Cleveland Browns agreed to such a one-sided provision. According to sources familiar with the negotiation dynamics, there are 2 theories. The first theory, according to sources, is that the Browns were so desperate to land Shedeur after the public back and forth about whether he'd sign there, that they were willing to agree to anything to get the deal done. And they either didn't fully understand the implications of the opt-out clause, or they convinced themselves it would never actually get triggered because they'd live up to all their commitments. The second theory, according to sources, is that Jimmy Haslam specifically approved the opt-out clause because he views it as a challenge and as motivation to finally get things right, knowing that if the Browns fail to build a winning culture in 2026, they'll lose Shedeur and be exposed as frauds in the most public way possible. The reaction from other NFL teams to the revelation of this opt-out clause has been a mix of shock and competitive interest, according to sources who've spoken with executives around the league. According to sources, multiple teams are now preparing for the possibility that Shedeur Sanders could be available in 2027 free agency if things go badly in Cleveland. And they're already beginning to position themselves financially and organizationally to pursue him if that happens. According to sources, several teams are viewing the 2026 season as essentially a one-year audition for the Browns, where, if Cleveland fails to meet Shedeur's standards, other teams will get a chance to recruit him without having to give up draft picks or make the kinds of unprecedented commitments the Browns made. The NFL Players Association, according to sources, is closely monitoring this situation because the opt-out clause represents a significant expansion of player power that could set a precedent for future negotiations. According to sources, the NFLPA views Shedeur's contract as potentially revolutionary because if the opt-out provision holds up and if Shedeur successfully uses it to become a free agent after 1 year, it would demonstrate that players with sufficient leverage can negotiate escape hatches that give them far more control over their careers than the standard rookie wage scale allows. According to sources, the union is already studying the language and considering whether to encourage other high-profile draft prospects to demand similar provisions in their contracts. The NFL League Office, according to sources, has approved the contract as submitted because technically nothing in the opt-out provision violates the collective bargaining agreement or league rules. According to sources, rookie contracts are allowed to include performance-based provisions and conditional terms as long as they fall within the wage scale parameters for each draft slot. And the league's determination was that Shedeur's opt-out clause, while unusual, doesn't actually violate any specific rule. But, according to sources, league officials are concerned about the precedent. This sets and are discussing whether future CBA negotiations should include restrictions on the kinds of opt-out or escape provisions that can be included in rookie contracts. As of now, Thursday, February 27th, 2026, Shedeur Sanders is scheduled to be drafted by the Cleveland Browns at 3rd overall in approximately 8 weeks. And everyone assumes he'll be there for the duration of his 4-year rookie contract. But, according to sources who understand what's actually in that contract, Shedeur could be gone after just 1 season if any of 7 different conditions are triggered, several of which are almost certain to occur given the Browns' history of dysfunction. This means the Browns didn't actually lock in their franchise quarterback for years. They got a 1-year rental with an option for Shedeur to extend if Cleveland proves they deserve him. And if they don't, the most hyped quarterback prospect in years could be a free agent at age 20 for heading into his 2nd NFL season, creating the most unprecedented free agency situation in league history.